Much for the contributions for question 1. Obviously, we bear in mind the aims and ambitions for what we want to do with enterprise education and entrepreneurship education. Obviously, we need to then consider the various challenges that can present itself. And I tend to look at this from looking at obviously the external environment within the educational environment. When we think of the various kind of factors or forces that can impact on it, everyone should hopefully see this now. It brings about this idea of the inclusion of many stakeholders, which is very important. And this then impacts on obviously what the current curriculum is, the various forces from industry, but also impacts on what the actual values or ideology of the institution is. When we think about going forward about the what's happened recently, and I talk about my own research in terms of the various rhetoric and approaches towards an entrepreneurial consensus, it's been very aware of the cultural factors and this entrepreneurial ecosystem. So this idea of the informing from the external environment to internal, but it's this key aspect that when we talk about academics and the industry stakeholders, how we can then as an institution, whether it be university or entrepreneurial organisations, how they then respond to the external environment. So this figure here just depicts the various internal and external stakeholders, and I think this kind of it aligns with the first point of what are the aims of entrepreneurship education. But there's this intervention that's required, as John, Alan and Frank, really everyone on the panel has said, this intervention from external stakeholders to reflect the realities of business towards entrepreneurship. And finally, we think about the overriding culture of an entrepreneurial university. It's important that you have to think of the fuller environment, this idea of being physically capable and being digitally mobile in terms of an institution are the entrepreneurial spaces, providing that physical capability to reflect sort of business realities and have that entrepreneurial space. And of course, in the marketplace and an entrepreneurial university, working with its immediate environment, that it can be resilient to reinforce the student and market need. So I suppose just to kind of sum that up, when we think about the second question, what are the various barriers and challenges when we think about these various forces and when we think about the aims of entrepreneurship education, but in reality, what can prevent these ambitions from taking shape? And I thought I'd put this out to the industry leaders in the panel. So first of all, put it to John. When we think about, as I said, as an institution, there's a way we want to go about it, but what are the challenges in reality for us to kind of reflect that?
Thanks, Robert. So I think there's obviously many challenges. One of the first ones I think we are on both sides of things is we're bogged down in process. So we have to kind of open up things and try to work closer together, but make it easier to work together and make it easier to give that education to the students, but also to educate the business network about what's already there and what skills they're going to get from the guys moving out. I keep coming back to this practical experience, and that's really because it's my bag. The theoretical side is great. I'm studying a lot of that myself at the moment and getting a lot from it. But the guys do need practical experience. They need to be able to have that and work with businesses locally. So I think there's a lot more that we could do to help support the university and getting placements to work, or even more project work. I know sometimes we use some of the support through the various areas within the university to deliver some of the projects that we're doing. I think we could collaborate a bit more and do some more work that way. I mentioned about the awareness previously. I do still think that from the business side, we need to be more involved. We could do more networking and understand what it is you guys are doing. Certainly opened up my eyes to what's available at university. The resources, the people, it's just incredible and it's very much untapped. You guys could be making a massive difference, especially to the local business network in Lanarkshire. I had a wee kind of thought about what you guys are teaching though, and we focus a lot on the entrepreneurial mindset. And I wanted to kind of throw something back to you to say, can that actually be taught? Do you think that's something you can teach in a classroom, or do you think that's something that people have to learn in a practical sense?
I'll maybe pick that up if I can. Yeah. Again, we talk about this stuff quite a lot. The entrepreneurial mindset is is a big part of the sort of enterprise research side of things, and maybe Veronica will jump in here after. I know this is an area she's interested in. I think there tends to be three main pillars of enterprise education. One's the develop an entrepreneurial mindset, which is a pretty well-researched field. The other is to develop entrepreneurial competencies. So these are the skills and the abilities, the experience, expertise that John and Frank would be helping real entrepreneurs develop in industry. And the last one is developing graduate attributes, which are the sort of things that Frank was talking about earlier on, that employees or entrepreneurs would need, but we're dealing with it in academia. And the point is, we need to make sure that what we're actually teaching is fit for purpose. And I'm going to go back to John just here, because John just touched on there, but I was going to mention it anyway. John's actually doing the same business and enterprise degree that I did. So John is not only, he's an industry guy who does real training, teaching, enterprise support day in, day out, but he's also sitting in the classroom learning about mainly the theory around it. But he's a practice guy, as I was, and to some extent still are. Do you think, I'm not mentioning what university it is, John, do you think that what you're getting in the classroom is going to help you become better to either be a better entrepreneur, internal corporate entrepreneur in someone else's business gateway, or to run your own business? Are you getting what you need in the university, whether it's ours or another university? I won't say. What do you think?
The short answer is yes. What I would say to you, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, Alan, is if I had went to uni, and this is a personal thing, if I had went to uni straight after college or school, I don't think I would have got out at what I'm getting just now. So for me, although some people would think I'm doing it the kind of backwards way around, I feel this is the better way, especially for my type of character. The classroom, you can see the classroom behind me, it's just the bare wall, it's actually the kitchen, because I'm doing distance learning. So I'm doing it through my own time, but doing a lot of work-based learning stuff, as Frank mentioned that he was doing with his guys as well. So yeah, I'm definitely getting a lot from it. It's opened my eyes to a lot more, and it will make me a better person, absolutely, within my work. And it's kind of cemented that a lot of the stuff I was doing was kind of rang true, that I'm doing the right thing, because I'm now getting the theory behind it and I understand it a bit more. So yeah, I think from what I need at this stage, it's right. Whether I can answer it's right for someone who's starting from school or college and straight in, they would need to answer that. That's a personal thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think because you said you were doing quite well and you're getting a lot out of it, I will mention the university. It's Napier, and I did the same degree in the same position as you as a business advisor, and I also got an awful lot out of it. I think they're on the right track, but they're also talking about the same sort of things that we're talking about. I'll maybe Shanghai the mic for a little bit longer, Robert, if that's okay. I just want to maybe check with Veronica. The stuff that we are seeing is certainly true in Scotland. And obviously you've taught in Scotland for a long time, Veronica. I'm just wondering, are you grappling and your colleagues grappling with the same sort of issues and challenges that we are here over in Italy?
Frank, sorry if I start before you, but then I'll give you the space. So actually, Alan, I was thinking of that because we have been pointing out a few keywords: mindset, culture, and then we can say relationship, networking. And one of the big challenges here, I told you, I can share with you my experience, my personal experience and professional experience. I worked in different countries. I told you in Beijing, Scotland, London, Paris, and then Italy. And I can see that culture is very important and also a big challenge. Sometimes is academic culture, sometimes is the students' culture, and even though the local culture that can make an impact, that can make an effect on being an entrepreneur. If I compare what I have been experiencing or what I did when I was working at EWS, I can see there are differences where I am working with, because there we were more enterprising. here by something that everyone knows, that Italian academics tend to be more theoretical rather than practical. Now we are going to a different direction. Alan, I can tell you that now I'm bringing here my experience. So when I teach here, I just make a nexus between research and teach, but also research and practical activities. Alan and I wrote a book chapter about that, where we have identified different aspects, which is one is the nexus between research and teaching, because I need to fill in what I am teaching. And then there is the environment, and then there is the entrepreneurial activities. In this last part, I want to connect with Frank. Frank, about entrepreneurial activities, you said that my passion is business and education, and we can count on you if we need to deal with this nexus or with this connection between education and business. Please, can you tell us your opinion about that?
Of course, I'd be delighted to share. Very quickly, Veronica, before I come back to your point as such, I just want to jump on again quickly about John's point around John, like myself, had practical business experience before going to embed in any academic educational establishment. So I was the same as John. I was 24 when I went back to university, not back when I went for the first time. You'll not mind me saying, but I think we're classed as mature students then. And if I think of that, coming back into your point, Veronica, is that I think what academia have to do is understand their customer. So I think academics, universities need to understand the customer. Is the customer that's coming to engage in business and enterprise or entrepreneurship want to become an entrepreneur? Do they want to help a local business under a certain faculty, business marketing? Do they want to become a social entrepreneur? Are they an entrepreneur? So I think, and I mentioned this earlier, I think in summary, it's about understanding the customer. And if us as a group of 6 here, for example, had to say, let's as a group re-evaluate how we teach an entrepreneurship BA. Would we go with the status quo, or would we redefine? Would we reimagine? Would we look at it from a different perspective? If we had the time, if we had the budget. And I think when it comes back to the question that Robert posed to us around the barriers, I think the barriers are time, budget, hierarchy, establishments. How long will it take to redefine a BA? How long will it take to rewrite all the outputs? And I think what we've got is, rather than the benefits to doing that, a lot of the time we can think about the challenges. And finally, how businesses and the education thing can work more in harmony is that once you understand the customer, so once we've defined what we think we need to do, we then need to bring these stakeholders in, the business community, as Robert put up in his diagram, which is the culture, which is the key stakeholders. Bring the business community in to say, we're working on redefining this. We want your opinions. We want you to be part of this journey. And again, everyone's mentioned that business is fast, it is quick. By the time it's written, is it defunct? So I get the fact that things change quickly, but I do feel that what we need to get better at is understanding the customer that comes for the qualification, and then working with the right establishments and external ecosystems so that the academics and the business industry work more collaboratively, so that the outputs are a lot more aligned with meeting everyone's objectives, really. Does that answer your point, Veronica, or did I go too far?
Frank, thank you, Frank. Yes.
Frank, can I join in? And Veronica, can I join in? And to address, Veronica, your nexus between theory and practice, and also Frank, with your elements of the curricula. I think for me, in my experience as a practitioner and also an enterprise educator, a natural challenge which I've noticed with enterprise education begins with the effectiveness of various contextual methods employed with entrepreneurship education. And what you get across a number of cases are negative outcomes rather than more positive outcomes. But what I think is there are actually promising opportunities for educators to lean towards lessons learned from personal startup experiences, like working with real life entrepreneurs. And these opportunities are quite important because it helps these educators to analyze and include the stakeholders when developing the curricula, because it's very difficult to design a curricula when you don't actually have the input of those academics and those practitioners. At Napier, what they have is a very strong and robust ecosystem called the Bright Red Triangle. And the Bright Red Triangle, they provide that support. They include rich and robust networks across the industry, and they're able to contribute to development of curricula and also ensure they provide support to young student entrepreneurs and positioning them for the challenges of the future. So I think it will be difficult to strengthen enterprise education without the input of those key stakeholders. I think their input is quite needed in developing the curriculum. I think this is where that with this we're able to address that relationship, that nexus between business and theory and practice. I think that's the linkage.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one there.
Guys, can I jump in?
Okay, go on.
Oh, sorry, Alan, please.
Okay, just saying that we know Bright Red Triangle very well. I'm very, very jealous of the several incubators they have there. And they're run by Nick Fannin, who was the Prince's Trust Manager for Glasgow when I was the Prince's Trust Manager, green behind the gills for Lanarkshire. He actually took me through induction. So you've got, in addition to the lecturers like Kingsley in the classroom, they've also got a professional enterprise support manager who will also tap into the other sort of networks in the same way Frank did when he was the guy that ran the Entrepreneurial Spark Incubator in Ayrshire. So that's something that we really need to be looking at in universities. I don't think we're particularly good at that in academia. I think Napier is a really, really good example of how it should be done. Get the incubators open, get the right people in, make sure that the people in class, the curricular guys, are speaking to the people out with the class co-curricular, and they're all on message, and then bring in the other people who can add some value, which I think is what Frank was talking about, like the Prince's Trust, Business Gateway, but other agencies as well, like the Scottish Institute for Enterprise, Young Enterprise Scotland, the Ernst & Young Academy, Scottish Edge. The one thing we have got in Scotland is the enterprise ecosystem is very, very well developed. There's a fantastic network of business support, and it's pretty much all free in Scotland. We're a very small country and we punch above our weight. And one of the ways we're able to do that is because in terms of innovation, we're quite well set up for that. And I never saw a better example than I did when Frank was running Entrepreneurial Spark. It was probably the most connected entity I think I've ever seen in all my time in the network. So I just wanted to say, I think there are lessons to be learned, as always, from examples of people who are doing this kind of stuff really, really well. And Napier are a good example, as are Entrepreneurial Spark, Business Gateway. That's me.
Guys, women first, sorry. And so I will just say something more. I was thinking of the current situation. We know what we are living, and there is another big challenge that we didn't talk about that, and this is the virtual learning environment. How the digital devices are challenging us. We are, academic, and sometimes we tend to be the square mindset. So we are very traditional. We don't want to do something that goes out our comfort zone. We want to feel that every day we know what we should do. That's it. So, but with this, the COVID-19, with the current situation, everything has changed. So the digital environment has forced to be used. And on the experience that we can bring here from the industry and the experience that we can bring here from academia, what are exactly the big challenges? We can see that there is a connection with culture, because if I am not culturally prepared to use these digital devices, it's a big challenge, it's a big limit for me. But have you all had experience some challenges during this time? Frank,
I think
okay.
I'm going to jump in first. I think I've probably experienced the challenge of a very small, very loud dog that clearly doesn't like the fact that I'm not giving her my undivided attention, and add to that a small boy as well. Just want to throw in a couple of things, and before I'll let the guys pick up on that point of Veronica's. I'm just looking at some of the messages from the social media feeds coming in. So a good comment from Alan Martin, who's one of our new recruits, and he's very, very good. Came through our student route, so a very enterprising individual and also a very experienced manager. And he makes the point, he says, I couldn't agree more with Frank. At times we don't understand what our students want from their time at university. But he also makes the point, however, how many teenagers do. And one of the questions, which I think will just highlight or just frame the point that Veronica's making, the question that came through was, how on earth do you teach enterprise nowadays in the climate of COVID-19? And it's the fast changing pace due to lockdown. Perhaps we'll be facing another lockdown as well. And then reduced access to things like campus. So I think that frames Veronica's question. I don't know who wants to pick that one up.
John, do you want to go first?
Oops, sorry, I turned for and did my mic for that. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Frank. Alan, just before I forget, I've written it down because I will forget. We're going to jump on something else. You'll probably be aware that we do run a business accelerator program locally. Be happy to have a chat offline about the sort of detail that we're covering in there and see if there's anything that we can support with what you guys are doing. I think there could be a wee bit of, use a terrible word, a bit of synergy in there to help.
No, so, brilliant. I'm all for a bit of synergy, John. I'll bite your hand off for that.
Veronica, when it comes to your question about using the technology, my job is very much about relationships and network. Personally, I found it really difficult to continue those relationships and do things via Zoom or different kind of digital platforms, but you have to go with the times. And I think that's just something that, as a company, as a Business Gateway in Lanarkshire, we put together a kind of digital requirements within a week that other businesses would have taken a year to kind of plan ahead and do that. We've taken all of our stuff from our workshops to be delivered online. All of our kind of external guys are consulting, doing stuff online for us as well. I'm sure Frank's the same. It is going to be a real challenge. And I think that from my side of things, trying to convert someone almost to kind of buy into what we're trying to do at Business Gateway becomes 10 times harder because we're trying to do it over a digital medium than trying to do it face-to-face. I'm desperate for that face-to-face element to come back, but now we are looking at streamlining all of our systems and operations to be delivered digitally. People signing bits of paper, which was historically in the public sector something we had to do. We're trying to get away from that and bog down and all this stuff that we've had to do in the past to move it across and be more digital. And I think just with as businesses, we have to move along and have to embrace that and have to do whatever we can to kind of try and be at the forefront of that. And I think that obviously has to be the same for what you guys are trying to deliver.
Hi there, I'll just jump in if I can. The connection was a bit poor there, so apologies. In terms of the second question, I think it was an excellent point that John's just made there. I'm just encapsulating what was discussed. Veronica spoke about the networking mindset. Frank and Kingsley were talking about this idea of the institutional culture and experiential learning. I think Kingsley was talking about case studies in the classroom. I think the key thing for me is when I think of entrepreneurship, in terms of if it's research groups or international publications, it can be quite a small community. It's a niche community in terms of researchers. So when I think of what Frank was talking about, the institutional culture and how that feeds down, sort of permeates through and down the organisation, is there a sort of a word association or connotation issue with entrepreneurship? And that's maybe a key problem. When we think about, graduate attributes, ties in with employability. in employment. When you think about enterprise, and we talk about enterprise on, for instance, the BA business as either certain optional modules or a core module in Alan's case, the very good enterprise creation module. But when we say that, where does that tie in along a spectrum of towards new venture creation? So I think the question I would add on to question 2, unless the connection meant that you've already went to question 3, is entrepreneurship centralised enough to provide, and I suppose this ties in with question 3, to provide certain solutions? Is that one of the key problems, that entrepreneurship education is not centralised enough by programmes, by academics, by industry support or university support?
Rob, let me go in on this. And we speak a lot about entrepreneurial mindsets, right? But I think I've recently come up with a new term called the institutional mindset, right? So we have entrepreneurs who actually have that mindset, but do we have institutions that actually have that entrepreneurial mindset? I think there was an interesting paper I read a few weeks ago by Lalit Sharma. I think it was written in 2014 in the Journal of Teaching and Teaching Methods. And what the author, Sharma, tried to do was examine some of the institutional factors or barriers influencing the impact of enterprise education. And in understanding these barriers, right, their research was actually based on a kind of a rich qualitative method, and they were able to obtain a number of rich findings. And I think the core of the findings were, one, that most institutions don't really have that entrepreneurial mindset. And when you don't have that mindset, you find out that those institutions will have a poor entrepreneurial ecosystem. There will be that poor entrepreneurial orientation. There will be inadequate context within the subject area, and a lack of training for the entrepreneurship teaching faculty. And of course, there will be ineffective teaching methodology. So I think the core of that problem, we need to be able to shed our light on the institutions themselves, right? Because they play an important role. And when there's a lack of that institutional entrepreneurial mindset, then we have a big gap, then we have a lacuna.
Yeah, and I think when I think of this, the challenges, and I think of how you can have institutions that are either very rooted in prestige or program, that kind of thing, is very much, when I think of that, process versus purpose. There's a process of how we teach, and that can be quite entrenched, but something can be entrenched, it could be, negative. When we think of the purpose going forward, and I think that's when we talk about the institutional culture of philosophy. So it's very much when we talk about, John spoke of digitised forms of education in light of the recent months. That gives about this idea of proactiveness rather than reaction to something. So I would say this process of institutions, but we need to make sure that purpose, the product at the end, is tied in with what, and I think Frank's going to latch on to this now, this idea of what do we actually need to see in industry. So I'll hand it over to Frank if he wants to add something to this here.
Yeah, I can speak in. I'm speaking from a entrepreneurial spark. I was 2 years with Entrepreneurial Spark covering the Ayrshire hatchery, and as part of that time, we grew Entrepreneurial Spark, or the team did, grew across the UK. So it's now across the UK, and it was bought over by RBS. It's now called Power Up. So it's their own Accelerate programme. And I'll be very honest and blunt about the word entrepreneur. I probably didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant till I was in my 20s. So I think that it comes back to going back to grassroots conversations at schools. And I know we're not here to go back as way far as that, but I think we need to look at how are we bringing the word entrepreneur, entrepreneurship, business, enterprise into local school. So I think we've got a massive job. That's another job. That's another job in our conversation. But I also think that we went through a time in Scotland, and I can't speak on behalf of anywhere else in Europe. Albeit I know that Israel's got a really vibrant entrepreneurial buzz. There's a lot of activity there. I was at an event in Shanghai once, and the Israeli stand was just absolutely incredible and buzzing of entrepreneurial culture, spirit, real energy. It was actually incredible. But I actually felt in Scotland the past 10 years that the word being an entrepreneur or being associated with entrepreneurs was quite a cool buzzword. It was like, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm not saying that people can't label themselves as an entrepreneur, but I think we've got to look at as well the organisations that I've supported in the past 8 years, collectively through Entrepreneurial Spark and as growing their own businesses. Have they went to university to get a degree on entrepreneurship? No, they haven't. They haven't. They have left school, probably not particularly academic. I'm not speaking out of turn. Many of them would have these open conversations with me. They didn't associate with or engage in school, so therefore they became they had to find another way to fit in, or to not to fit in, to go and do their own thing. So they found a niche in the market, or a gap in the market, and they built a business. And I think what you've got is, if you look at a lot of entrepreneurial stories, not everyone, before one of you correct me here, but many of successful entrepreneurs come from a non-academic background. So I think it's also about making sure that we're aware of that, but as an institution, we need to be clear on what are we offering entrepreneurs of the future, though, so that they know they can come to us and they don't feel fear. Because I do think there's a bit of a fear around as well. People who are entrepreneurial, and I'm not qualified in breaking all that down onto their skill set and their attributes, but entrepreneurial mindsets tend not to like to comply. They tend not to want to sit in a classroom or watch a virtual lesson for 2 hours. They're too busy thinking about what they're building, what they're creating, who they're meeting, what they're selling, what's the pitch deck looking like, how are they speaking to Scottish Enterprise to get 100 grand to get their first facility. So I think there's a bit of we need to understand, are people coming to UWS to get an entrepreneur degree because they want to set up a business, or is it because they've set up a business and they want the theory now because they've done it and they want to bring both worlds together?
I think, Frank,
I'm conscious I went a bit of a tangent there.
No, not at all.
I hope I've touched some good points.
You've actually allowed me to answer a question of John's that I realised I hadn't answered at all. He asked if this sort of stuff can be taught, and I would argue that it can be taught. I tend to view pretty much anything as being on a spectrum, and I think the best metaphor I can use is sport. So if somebody comes to you and they're already an elite athlete, I think if they get some teaching, training, interventions, if they're appropriate and they're good, then they can make small incremental improvements on whatever it is that they're doing. Whereas if it's just somebody off the street and they're no more or less talented than anyone else in that area, then they can make big improvements going from here to become better that way. So I think we're conditioned as humans to learn, and I think entrepreneurship, including the mindset bit, that's really just about perception, how they perceive themselves, and that's linked to things we think like confidence. And again, we know that you can improve and build people's confidence, and that was a lot of the work that you were doing in Entrepreneurial Spark, Frank, and we didn't do an awful lot of that in Business Gateway, but we did do quite a lot of it in the Prince's Trust. So I think together there are different agencies that are better at this type of thing than others, and we appreciate that we're all working with fairly limited resources. In terms of the motivation, though, just to put that one to bed, I think we're just about to move on to the next question. We're good for time.
No, just one second, Alan. Can I jump in and do something else? Frank said that there are a lot of entrepreneurs who actually they didn't go to the university. They just decide to be an entrepreneur and they start to do it. Okay. But think about what they are, the commonality between those entrepreneurs and educated entrepreneurs, if we could call with this title. This is the passion. So passion in what I am doing here. You can see in this room, everyone has got the passion on what is doing. And then on the top of the passion, there is a challenge, which is the ego. How am I educate my ego as an entrepreneur to run my business or to show up my brand image in the correct way? So you say that I can just do something that, you know what now is more prepared, the university, in employing a learning by doing approach. It's not just, okay, I give you the theories and let's go. So just learn it, acquire knowledge, and that's it. But no, I transfer you knowledge, but I transfer my passion. And then I let you go, I let you learn what I am transferring you. So basically, I give you some knowledge, but you shape that knowledge on your own way. So now this is another big challenge. And us, as educators, because it doesn't matter if you come from academia or if you come from industry. We can see here that everyone can be an educator. So can educate people in the how to use that passion, that ego, or that entrepreneurial skills in the right way. We know that there are a lot of startups, okay, but how many of them actually they are growing up? They are becoming the unicorns, just few of them. So how we can convert an idea in a real business? This is a big challenge because everyone got an idea, but perfect. How that idea can become a real business, but not just, okay, a startup can become a business that it can grow up or running for ages, for years. It can become, for example, a family business. We have the examples of family business running for, I don't know, a decade. How we can allow that today where everything is running so fast, is so short, and we can taste the long run of a business, or we can visualize how long can be running our business. So how do you inspire your students, even if there are employed students, to be a long-running entrepreneurs? Can you give me this title again?
Yeah, so I think that question there is about sustainability, not just starting a quick lifestyle business, the sort of sub £70,000 turnovers, which are really important businesses that John was talking about. 99% of the businesses in the UK are these small, nano, micro businesses. 75% of those businesses are family run, which means the family units making decisions. So we're about to finish this question, but I'm just going to get Frank to jump in on that one, and then we'll move on to Veronica's last question.
Yeah, Veronica, it's such a good point. I mean, if I think around what I was taught or what I learned about the entrepreneurial mindset during the time at Entrepreneurial Spark, did that encourage me to set up my own business? Did that help me facilitate taking my own entrepreneurial journey? Yeah, it absolutely did. It absolutely did.
Frank, Alan, can I come in?
Yeah.
Okay. Veronica, fantastic question. I like to use myself as an example. So I started my business 25 years ago back home in Nigeria, right? And I was forced into entrepreneurship as a result of maybe difficulties within my area, going to school. We didn't have so much money, right? And one of the challenges I faced was that, okay, I actually had the passion, like you rightly pointed out. I had the passion and I started my business, but I struggled. I struggled with areas of finance. I struggled with areas of marketing strategy. I struggled with areas of building a team in terms of having a short-term, medium-term, long-term goal, right? So I kept on doing my business, but I was struggling. I wasn't making the much needed revenues. But when I went to school, my orientation transformed. I was able to learn key elements of finance. I learned about savings. I learned about marketing strategy. I learned about all the key elements that you would need to design a business plan. And I'm not saying going to school will make you that successful entrepreneur, but it gives you that strong, robust foundation that positions you for the future. So I think that's my own perspective. I'm drawing from my own experience as a young entrepreneur at that time.
Yeah, sorry, Alan, my phone was in silent, but it sometimes rings against the Mac. So apologies to everyone watching if I was off screen there. Very quickly, absolutely get your point, Kingsley. And one of the things that I loved about Entrepreneurial Spark was that the methodology they used increased the likelihood of success of the entrepreneurs that we were working with, because we did exactly what Kingsley's just said. We worked with them in their idea, and we put a suite of projects and partners round about them to fast track their concept. So whether that be support from KPMG, support from Harper McLeod, who was a legal firm, marketing support from our partners Dell Tech. So what we did was bring them in, work with them, and get them working with the right people so they could fast track quicker. And during that process, obviously, I was learning and developing myself. So I used some of that mindset and inspiration and process to develop Forever Great. So it's really important that yeah, if you have got a toolkit, if you have got education, a qualification, academia, and the idea, it's like I said at the beginning, both of the worlds coming together, man, you can do some really good stuff. But that doesn't mean to say if you've not got them, you also can't be successful. I think we've got to be clear. In my experience, both of them worked like that for me, and it was magic. It was absolutely magic when we had the practical experience and the theory coming in, and it was like this. It was like synergy like never before. So I will always have the back of the academics because I get how it worked for me. But I think we've got to be clear that it isn't for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a big fan of the entrepreneurial spark model, but I know it's just that, as we've talked about this before, for some people it's a bit of a Marmite thing. They like the push, the fact you're pushed constantly to hit your sales targets or whatever, whereas other people, and probably the majority, want to kind of go at their own pace. But I think the important thing is there's definitely a real place for the likes of the entrepreneurial spark model, because for some people it's exactly what they need.